Everybody, and welcome into the 49th edition of Texas Longhorns Live. We really appreciate you guys joining us today on this beautiful Monday. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below, and let's jump right into it. It was a very busy weekend for the Texas Longhorns, landing not one, not two, but three transfers all in the same day. So let's talk about that because I don't think we're done, but I think this would be a fun topic. Let's rank the importance of these transfers and how we look at it. So far we have landed 10 transfers, which is a decent amount. So let's start out with number 10, Gerald. Who do you have as number 10 most important transfer?
Number 10 most important transfer. I think I'm gonna go with the punter, right? Like, and not based on anything, but like punting is vital, right? Punting is super important. You ask any football coach like how important the special teams unit is, and Texas hasn't really been consistent at punter really like since some of the Aussies fell off, right? Texas had a really nice run of Australian punters going, and then something went sideways about it. So I think for a team like Texas, who's going to probably be a little less consistent on offense, just based on the fact that they're going to be super young next year, having a weapon at punter, I think the guy that Texas brought in has the potential to do that. I think there's a lot of benefit that Texas fans are going to look over naturally because a punter is not a sexy addition.
No, I mean, that's definitely fair. I went a little bit different with mine. It's the guy we just landed, or one of the guys we just landed, and that's Levon Johnson. I think he's a nice piece. I think he's like a C overall coming in. I think he only had 10 tackles last year. He's basically a rotational guy, and I think that goes to show because we're interested in another guy that just jumped in the transfer portal, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So to me, that's just like, you know what? We're just going to get as many rotational bodies as we can at that position. So that's why I have Levon Johnson at number 10.
I think that makes sense. Levon Johnson is a guy he's right above, like number 9 on my list. So, like,
Okay.
spoiler alert for my list. But yeah, I think Levon Johnson is a guy who, and we'll talk about this a little bit more with our second question today. But Texas very clearly, I think, knows they need to add something in that defensive line room, right? There's something that they really need to add. There's something that they're missing. And so that's why they're being as aggressive as they are. They've signed multiple defensive linemen, and they're still going after effectively every good defensive lineman that jumps in the portal. So big for Texas. I spoiled my number 9. Who's your number 9?
Mine is another defensive lineman, Hero Kanu. Again, a rotational piece who really didn't get much run at Ohio State. He was a 4-star coming out of high school. I definitely think there's some upside there that we could tap into, something like a Bill Norton type where he was okay at Arizona and then we kind of unleashed him. He played really well down the stretch for Texas. Like, we would love to have Bill Norton back this year. So I think Hero Kanu and a couple other guys on this list can definitely grow a little bit more, but he is my number 9 for right now. Who's your number 8?
My number 8, I've got Brad Spence. Brad Spence, based on, I think, what he adds to the team and where the state of the team already is at linebacker, I just don't think he's going to be that, like, he doesn't really raise the ceiling a ton. There's not really, again, Texas needs rotational guys at that linebacker unit. Anthony Hill, Leon Galefau, they need to get some reps, but the vast majority of the time it's going to be those two guys. And this is not a shot at Brad Spence or anybody else in the linebacker room. If we see guys that are not named Anthony Hill and Leon Galefau getting significant snaps in the linebacker position, one of two things happen. Either somebody explodes in fall camp or somebody gets majorly injured at some point in the year, right? And one of those things, great reason, right? But
Yeah.
the more likely reason, based on what we've seen from Texas, what we know about that room, is that if we see guys other than Anthony Hill and Leon Galefau getting the majority of the snaps at linebacker, that means somebody got injured. So I just don't think Brad Spence, again, great talent. I'm glad Texas added him. You need depth at that position, especially in the long grind of a season that Texas is expecting. But again, based on the talent in that room, Anthony Hill is going to be a top 15 pick next year, right? Leon Galefau has the opportunity to work himself into a first couple of days draft pick. So that's why I think I have Brad Spence there.
No, I think that's fair. I have another defensive lineman here, and it's Travis Shaw. And it's kind of the same reason I have Hero Kanu and these guys down the list, because they haven't produced. Now, this guy, I think, has the most upside, and that's why I'm at 8 in this, because I have 8, 9, and 10 of guys that don't really have very good stats, honestly. Like, if you look at him, you're like, I don't know about these guys, but I put Travis Shaw at 8 because he's got the highest upside. He was a former 5-star recruit coming out of North Carolina, going to North Carolina. So again, I think there is potential there. I think one of these guys will break out. I'm pretty confident in that. Out of the 3 I just mentioned, the guy that I'll have higher when we get there is another defensive lineman that I think is shown in spring that he's going to be a good football player. And when we get there, I'll talk about him. But I think Travis Shaw is the highest upside out of the 3 that I have on the lower tier end, and that's why I'm at number 8.
Yeah, I've got him a little higher on my list. I'm a believer in him, so we'll talk more about that when we get there.
Number 7 is where I have the punter, Jack Baumeister. I just think he's a really, really elite player at his position. And a position, like you said, we've kind of struggled at. Like, we used to look at Ryan Buchevsky and say, damn, he kind of stunk. No, we would love to have Ryan Buchevsky back. If you look at the numbers, yeah, I was going to say he would be way better than what we've had the last couple years. Ryan Sanborn was kind of the same thing. We kind of took him for granted while he was here as well. Last year was definitely a down year. I'm hoping that can change for Texas with Jack Baumeister. We'll have to see, but one can hope, and that's why he's my number 7.
Yeah, I mean, I already talked about him. I had him lower on the list. Just I didn't want people to troll me. I'm a special teams guy in and of itself, so I had him lower on the list. So number 7 for me, I've got Cole Brevard. I've got him a little bit lower on the list. I think he's gonna have a big impact, but I honestly kind of threw a dart at a dartboard and decided who was going to be my defensive tackles because we just don't think and know with any of them. Let's just be real, right? We're all kind of shooting in the dark. Is it going to be Hero Kanu, who I have a little bit farther up my list just because I like his athleticism a little bit more than I like Shaw's and Brevard. So like there's an opportunity for any of these guys to make a name for themselves. I feel like you're going to hear me say the same thing about the defensive tackles and get bored of it, right? I don't know which one's going to pop. They all have an opportunity to be the number 1 guy on the list based upon how this defense runs. So I've got Brevard here.
Yeah, next up for me is Emmett Mosley. I think he's going to be a really good player for Texas. I just don't know how much we're going to need him. If Ryan Wingo's healthy, if DeAndre Moore's healthy, if the reports of Dalen McCutcheon being as good as he is and Parker Livingston being as good as he is are correct, then this guy could legitimately be the 5th best wide receiver on the roster. And in Steve Sarkisian's offense at Texas and even at Alabama, he really doesn't use the 5th wide receiver. He really only goes 4 deep. The 5th guy gets sprinkled in every so often. So that's why I have Emmett Mosley here.
This one's going to be boring for folks. I have him in the same spot, right? I think Mosley is a guy who brings something different to the wide receiver room because he's more of your physical possession guy, but that's not necessarily the kind of wide receiver that Texas plays or that Sark plays in this offense. It's just not necessarily the skill set. I think of like Colin Johnson type wide receiver where they're not going to make these spectacular game breaking down the field things. But on that same note, we don't know what this wide receiver room is going to be from a floor or a ceiling standpoint. The ceiling is very high for this room, but we don't really know what the floor is. And Emmett Mosley is a pretty solid floor setter for this room. He was a good receiver in a run first, terrible Stanford offense. So in a room like this, maybe he drops a couple of pounds in the offseason. Maybe he comes in fall camp and looks a little bit lighter, a little bit faster. Because, again, that size and that physicality is really what Stanford is looking for in their wide receivers. More pass first, more possession catches. So that type of thing. So I wonder if he does something to change his body in the offseason. That would drastically change my rankings.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Next up for me, again, a little bit higher just because I think he's really good at his position, is Mason Shipley. I think Mason Shipley's a really good kicker, and it's also the fact, again, we're coming off a really bad season for our kicker. I think Bert Auburn made like 67% of his field goals, which is a terrible number. Like the worst you'd ever want to be at a program like Texas is like 80%, and this guy was 30 of 34 the last 2 years. He made a 60-yard field goal at one point. He was 10 of 12 over 40 yards. He's a really good football player. And again, it's just raising it. I don't think he's going to be the best kicker in college football, but he's definitely not going to be as bad as Bert Auburn was last year. And that's why I have him ranked here.
Yeah, I've got him even higher on my list. So hold on for that. That's going to be my controversial pick of the day. So where are we at? What number are we at? I lost my spot.
I believe we're at 3.
At 3. So I have got Travis Shaw here. I've got Travis Shaw already? Defensive tackles, right? Travis Shaw, there's 19 of them. Texas is going to add 6 more in the portal. Whoever starts at defensive tackle is my 3rd most impactful transfer. Whoever it is, this Texas defense is so much better when they have an impactful defensive tackle. It is what it is, right? That's how it operates. The linebackers are meant to be the linchpins of this defense. They're meant to be the playmakers. We've seen it before. We'll see it again. So whoever the heck, I think it's Travis Shaw. It might be one of the other 19 guys they're going to add from the in the portal at the tackle position that starts there. So this list could be invalid based tomorrow or this weekend when the cat from Syracuse comes that we're going to talk about in just a second. Like whoever it is, right? Could be in any of them.
No, that is fair. This list could be invalid. And yeah, I said 10. We only had 9 transfers. So I got us off to the wrong foot with saying 10 when we only have 9. Number 3 for me is Cole Brevard. And this is, again, just with the stuff hearing like coming out of spring, it seems to be that it's Cole Brevard and Alex January getting the majority of reps up the middle. So I think those are probably your two starters for right now. And I think for the most part, that's going to hold true. And that's why I had the other three ranked lower, just because I don't know who's going to get the playing time out of those three at the bottom. That's why I have Cole Brevard. Guess what? What I'm hearing, I'm going to put him at number 3. So he's my number 3 for right now.
No arguments here. So I'm on 2, right? We're on 2.
Yeah.
So I have Jack Andrews, the tight end, at number 2. He, for Texas, and I mentioned it last week, I think when he was visiting, right? Texas needs that guy that a young quarterback, first year starting Arch Manning, can have as a safety blanket, right? They need a guy like that who can be a consistent receiving threat. And this guy is a two-way tight end, right? He can both block in line and he can be receiving threat, which you kind of have a little bit of both. It's closer to Gunnar Helm than what we saw with like Jatavian Sanders a couple of years ago. And so, again, not just for Arch Manning, but this offense likes to run a tight end wheel, right? Likes to run a tight end drag. So he's going to see quite a bit of run. Again, I was hoping that one of the guys on campus would step up, but by Texas being so aggressive with this guy, I think he's got kind of an inside track to be the number 1 tight end in fall.
No, for sure. And he's going to be my number 1. So when I get there, I'll discuss him a little bit more. For number 2 for me is Brad Spence. I do agree with you. The room is loaded, so it's going to be hard for him to get snaps, but I think he's just a really good player. Like, he's very versatile. He can play inside, or he can play at the edge position and rush the passer as well. I think, honestly, that's probably where we're going to see him a little bit more. And he was really good for Arkansas coming down the stretch. I think he had like 3 sacks in his last 4 games. And let's be honest here, there wasn't that much talent on that Arkansas defense. It was Landon Jackson, and then kind of Brad Spence came on late down the stretch. So I think with him in this system, I think he can have a Trey Moore type impact, what we saw last year, and maybe even a little bit better because he's already used to the SEC type competition.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair, right? And if Brad Spence comes in and blows it up, like I'm going to be happy about it. I just, again, if he's seeing a lot of play time, specifically at linebacker, right? That's what he came in and transferred at. And really at edge too. Texas is pretty loaded at the edge positions. I just really like the positional value of that cat just doesn't necessarily scream impact to me. But that being said, if he comes in and plays well, I'm happy about it.
100%. My number 1, Jack Andrews. I think he's just a really, really good football player overall. I think this is the absolute best case scenario you could have gotten in a spring portal tight end. Like, PFF has this guy ranked as the 2nd returning tight end in college football. So think about that. You just landed the 2nd best tight end according to PFF in the spring portal window. Guys like that really don't hit the spring portal window. That's very rare. And for Texas to wrap this up as quickly as they did shows that they really, really like this guy, number 1. And 2, it's an important part in the Steve Sarkisian offense. He tells you it's one of the most important parts. It unlocks everything he wants to do, basically, is what he says on the offensive side of the ball. So I really like this pickup. I think there's a real argument to say that Texas upgraded at the tight end position over Gunnar Helm here, which is crazy to say, but that's how good this guy can be. And he was a leading receiver at Cal on a Cal team that was pretty good. Like, if you see all these guys transferring, they're all going to good schools. Mendoza went to Indiana. Ott went to Oklahoma. Andrews ends up at Texas. They had talent on that football team. They almost beat Miami. So really, really talented player.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it before, right? I the only reason he's not at number 2 is because of my PTSD about kickers. I have Mason Shipley at number 1. I have Mason Shipley at number 1. Like, a championship level team should not have anxiety around kickers. Period. End of sentence. Right. So no shots at Bert Auburn, but bringing in a guy who 3 of his 4 misses last year were from like basically 50 and then longer than 50. Right? That to me is a massive upgrade for Texas. And again, there should not be anxiety. A head coach should not be asking kicking questions in the semifinals of the college football playoff. You should not be changing the guy who's kicking your field goals and extra points. That should not be happening on a championship level team. They're called extra points for a reason. They're supposed to be free, right? You should have a weapon at kicker that can get those things for you. Now, field goals are failures when it comes to offense, but if you do fail, why do you want to be in a position to compound a failure with another failure? And so Mason Shipley, you're gonna reduce the amount of heartburn medicine I have to take on Saturdays. You're my most impactful player in the fall.
No, I think that's completely fair. Like, if you interchange Mason Shipley for Bert Auburn in the SEC championship game, Texas wins the SEC championship. I'm very confident in saying that. We left, I think, 9 points on the board. If he just makes 2 out of 3 of those, were SEC champions. So
Yep.
definitely important. And I completely agree about, having to talk about that in a college football playoff game and when you're in the Final Four is crazy to me. And then also it does rely on Texas to be better in the red zone too, because our
Fair.
field goal kicker shouldn't be attempting 30 plus field goals a season either. He got a close up, I believe, to 40 almost attempts 2 years ago. So that's unacceptable as well. But if you're going to be bad in the red zone, at least have a kicker that can make it consistently. And I think that we have that now in Mason Shipley.
My grandmother always told me, if you're going to make a bad choice, don't make two bad choices. Don't compound it by adding a second. Don't compound bad red zone performance by having a bad kicker.
100%. So that does it for our list for now. We may have to add to this list in the future. We'll have to see.
We'll
Texas Texas continues. We may get to 11. I don't know. They're pretty busy in the portal, but let's jump over to this. So Murad Watson from Syracuse visiting Texas tomorrow. And, with these things, it happens quickly. He could definitely be committed to Texas tomorrow night or Wednesday morning. That's usually how these things work. If it takes a long time, they usually don't end up at your school. So what do you think about him? And then what do you think, again, we kind of talked on the transfers. What do you think it says about the room in general if they continuing to add to it like this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the second question first. It's very clear that this coaching staff post, I think, like the first offseason has really only gone to the portal if A, they think there's like a home run, like can't miss guy in the portal, or B, they know they need to upgrade or just add a bunch of bodies in a room, right? We've seen it at defensive tackle 2 years in a row, right? We've seen it at wide receiver where they went high ceiling guys, didn't really add a ton, right? They either go really high level or really wide with it. And so I think this is pretty indicative that Texas still isn't super comfortable with what they have in the defensive tackle room specifically, right? All of the names that Texas is being tied to in the portal are either guys like Endries, who's like a top end elite guy at his position, or every defensive tackle that pops in, right? Any defensive tackle that goes into the portal, they're even double bidding and getting kids to go back on their signatures with other schools to get them signed at Texas. So like that's how much of a priority I think upgrading the defensive line is. Now specifically about Watson, he's really intriguing to me. He's a very intriguing prospect. 6'3", 315, right? He is one of those guys who has the body to be a space eater, right? He has the body to be a space eater. He played on all 13 games last year, started 11, I think, 31 tackles. So not like a ton of production in that defense, but again, I said it before, the defensive tackle in this offense, if they're making a bunch of tackles and a bunch of backfield plays, that's playing with house money. Their job is to occupy two guys in a gap and let Anthony Hill make the plays, let Leon Galefau make the plays, right? So a guy like Watson, he's got a big body, he's thick, he can occupy a lot of space. So I think, again, based on Texas's priorities, they're probably going to push him pretty hard on his visit to just not leave campus without a signature on the dotted line.
Yeah, I agree with your first point about, we got a guy that was going to go to North Carolina. Apparently the paperwork was already signed. All he had to do was basically send it in. And Texas like, no, we want you. So they upped their bid. And that tells me everything I need to know. You're 100% right. We don't know about this room or any of these guys in this room. So we're just going to get as many as we possibly can. And if two of them hit, heck yeah, it's basically, when you play, if anyone has seen those YouTube shorts of that movie of the couple that plays the lottery, where instead of buying one ticket, let's buy $10,000 worth of tickets, basically scratch them off, and we're going to win. That's how Texas is kind of playing it with his defensive tackle room. And I like the strategy. It's something that's been discussed even in the NFL of like with quarterbacks. Hey, get as many as you can in a draft or as many as you can with free agency in a draft. And one of them's bound to hit. I think that's how kind of Texas is playing this, because none of these guys, I'm going to tell it straight to you guys like I always do. They're not great players. None of them scream, man, this guy's a hell of a player here. They're all okay rotational players. And maybe they have a chance of hitting. Like Murad Watson's a freshman, so he could definitely live up to his expectations of whatever they were coming out of high school were. Travis Shaw, I think, could do that too with some good coaching from Kenny Baker. But someone like Hero Canoe, I don't know if there's really much there. Levon Johnson, I don't really know if there's very much there to tap into. They're more rotational guys. So I think that says a lot about the room in general. And like I've been saying, it's just not going to be as good as it has been the last 2 years. I just don't see that happening. But again, it doesn't need to be. Like you said, that's not the key to this Texas defense. Your linebackers are a lot better than they used to be here at Texas. The edges are a lot better than they used to be here at Texas. So if those live up to the expectations, then I'm not as concerned about the interior of this defensive line.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue for Texas is that teams are not going to let their elite defensive linemen into the portal, right? They're positions that you spend on, and defensive tackle is probably not one of the top 5. Like, you're spending on quarterbacks and receivers and edge rushers, but like, if you're an elite lineman, you're not going to be able to build an elite line unit through the portal, right? We've seen that with multiple different spots. And so, you may hit on a guy, you may add somebody, I'm trying to think of a name like Texas added last year, right? But like, you're not going to add a ton. Like, you're not going to have 100% hit rate on that. And so I think Texas going almost like Moneyball, right? We can't replace the guys we had last year on a 1-to-1 basis. So let's grab 73 guys and try to replace them in aggregate. And we'll see what works. Throw a bunch of stuff at the wall, see what sticks, see who steps up, because a lot of this is kind of low risk, high reward for Texas. If you have to play all 6 of them for 15 snaps a game, great. If you have a couple of guys that pop and you can play them for more than that, you can play them as a primary starter, great, right? Play the hot hand that week. Who had a great week of practice? Okay, you're starting this week. So there's a lot of options that Texas has here with a room that's this deep. Again, this is really a room that I think they're really trying to shore up, like having a decent floor with an uncertain ceiling.
Well, and that's the thing too, that you said that the trenches are kind of a war of attrition anyway. So, hey, if you have 6 guys to just rotate the whole game, eventually the offensive line tired, and that C+ guy is going to start beating those offensive linemen just because they're tired, and this guy's only played 8 snaps. So that's another way to look at it. Overall, I do think this guy has the highest upside of anyone we brought in other than Cole Brevard. I think Cole Brevard's an actual good defensive lineman, but I think he has a higher upside than Travis Shaw. I think he has a higher upside than Hero Canoe, and I definitely think he has a higher upside than LaVon Johnson. So I definitely think Texas is going to be pretty aggressive with him.
Yeah, and this is the kind of kid that I think the transfer portal was made for, right? He was a 3-star kid out of high school, didn't really get a ton of offers. I think Tennessee was probably his only big offer. I think Rutgers was a Power 5 offer technically, but it's not really that much of a football school being a kid. If I think he's from New Jersey, right? So like, yeah, a guy comes in, plays really well as a freshman, like, let's see if I can upgrade, and that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. It's someone made for this where, hey, I wasn't known in high school, but I made myself known a little bit here so I can step up to a bigger school. And yeah, I think the biggest guy like that jumped in the portal defensive tackle wise is Demonic Williams from Oklahoma. And let's be honest, he didn't really produce that well last year either. So yeah, that's like the biggest name I can think of. You're 100% right. Like, key positions like that, it's very hard to find. Guess what? 330-pound guys that are freak athletes. And when you find them, you pay them just so they stay on campus. So you're never going to get a great one in the portal unless that guy's just, I'm worth a lot of money and the school's not willing to pay it, but most schools right now are willing to pay it seems like. And there's also some schools that are just always willing to overpay for people as well. So we'll see what happens.
That's capitalism. You pay for what you need.
100%. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. We really appreciate you guys joining us. It really helps out what we try to do here. Also, guys, if you know anyone that would like to sponsor the show, and it doesn't have to be this show, it can be any of the shows on the Mark Rogers Voice of College Football Network, we would really appreciate it. As you see, we have a sponsor right there on the screen. This is the Win Agency talking about their partnership with the Michigan Voice of College Football channel. And if you know anyone that wants to get your business, product, service, or personal brand to the next level by partnering with the Voice of College Football, let's discuss how you can also reach your target market. Contact us at sponsorships@vocfb.com today. I really appreciate you guys for doing that. Spread that word there. It really helps out. And then also, guys, if you want to check out the Instagram page, just type in the Voice of College Football. Check us out there. We have different content coming out each day. Obviously, there'll be a lot more coming down the pipeline. The Nico situation is crazy. I mean, they basically traded quarterbacks now, UCLA for Tennessee. I think that's super interesting because it's going to tell you right now who made the better choice, which is going to be awesome. And then his brother just jumped in the damn transfer portal like half an hour ago. So I don't know what the hell's going on with that family. But again, guys, check us out over there. We really appreciate it. And then you can check us out wherever you'd like to listen to your audio podcast, whether that be Spotify, Apple, Amazon. You can find us there. Just type in the Voice of College Football. It really helps out what we're trying to build here, guys, and we really, really appreciate it. Next up, James Simon, I guess, is stepping up at practice. And I just wanted to get your opinion on this, Gerald. What do you think this means overall for James Simon? What do you think this means overall for the running back situation?
Yeah, I think it's two different things, right? I think for the running back situation, like, let's be real. After CJ Baxter, it's pretty muddy at that running back spot. Like Wisner, Gibson, Clark, and now Simon. There's not a ton of separation from what I've seen. Guys have been injured. Guys haven't really done much on the field, right? We saw Jared Gibson play a little bit and then get benched, right? Wisner was great for Texas last year, hit 1,000 yards, but ultimately we saw some of his limitations as a player and kind of why he was ranked where he was. And that's no shot at him. Like he's a guy who will forever be like, he stepped up, 3-star kid, did his thing, right? So no shots at him, but it's moderately concerning for me for the running back room that who is that second guy, right? Because if James Simon coming in, he's not necessarily the 5-star kid that Texas. He's a top 200 kid, but he's not the Bijan Robinson. He's not the guy who you expect to show up on campus and be one of the better running backs. And so he doesn't really he doesn't, and maybe this is how he's not really that different from the other guys in the room, right? I think Texas really lacks at right now a kind of a game-breaking speed kind of guy. And so, if that was his game, it would make sense why he was stepping up, but he's not really. He's 5'11", 200 and something pounds, right at 200, maybe 195. So there's a lot of mud in the middle of that running back room. And so I think for Texas, Sark is unafraid to just play the best of the guys, regardless of who it is, which I think that's a good thing, right? So he's a slightly taller Jarrett Gibson, I feel like, at this point, but he is probably one of the better receivers they have in the room. So maybe that's where he's been able to make a name for himself. It's hard to tell at this point.
No, I kind of agree. And I'm on the side of, I used to be more worried about the tight end than we obviously got Jack Andrews. But number 2 for me was running back. And because I don't know what CJ Baxter is going to be, he basically tore up everything in his knee. He's coming back. We'll see how he does. And then Christian Clark coming off an Achilles. That's really hard to recover from.
Jonathan Gray.
Yeah. We don't want that to happen again. Trey Wisner, good player, but he's just not when you look at national championship teams and the running back situations, Trey Wisner is not a lead back. That's just the reality of the situation. And that's not a shot at him. He's outshot that 3-star that he got coming out of high school, but that's just the reality of the situation. And then you have Jarrett Gibson, who I like him, but my God, did he have some fumbling issues last year? It was really bad. I think he had 3 fumbles in the Florida game at one point. He was either 2 or 3. So it was really bad. Obviously, we know Jaden Blue struggled with that his whole career at Texas. And that's something, honestly, guys, if you look at the history of running backs, it's really hard to get better at ball security. It's something you're either just good at or you're not. There's very few running backs I've watched where he gets better. Even that's something that Adrian Peterson was bad at for his whole career. That was his worst attribute for him. So, I don't know what I think of it. I think James Simon is a good player. I said that coming out of high school. I think he's going to be a good player for Texas. I just don't think if he's your number 2 back right away, I think that's a pretty big issue for Texas. I think that says more about the room, honestly, than it does about James Simon. Because you're right. He's not spectacular really at anything. He's good at basically everything. He's good one cut back. He's got good agility. He's got okay speed. I will say his best attribute is pass catching out of the backfield, but so we're basically just going to use him like Jaden Blue at the end of the season, because that's basically what Jaden Blue was assigned to at the end of the season. And that can't be your number 2 running back. So that can be your number 3 running back. Like if you have a Keelan Robinson, that's kind of how we used him. That's perfectly fine. I have no issue with that. But you can't go a guy like Cedric Baxter coming off an injury as your number 1, or Trey Wisner, and then number 2 is James Simon. That can't be the reality of the running back room at Texas.
Yeah, it's wild to see that, because it felt like they were going to be in a better position. And Texas obviously had Tashard Choice did a really great job of recruiting that room, but I think Tashard Choice had a kind of running back that he was looking at, and I think Texas is missing out on a more diverse skill set, because I think Sark does like to run that zone, that pounding zone scheme, which makes sense to have a bigger bodied running back there. But I think you lose something with a guy like Jaden Blue, right, who is able to make one cut and then be faster than geometry on the field, right? Nobody's angles are good enough to catch that kid. So for me, as it comes into fall, I'm not super confident in that aspect of the game. And so, especially, and I keep coming back to this, especially in a year with a first-time starter at quarterback, right? Having a consistent running game, being able to use play action, being able to allow defenses to back off a little bit and not have a key on what he's doing. That is so important for Arch Manning coming in. Ohio State is going to try to rattle him early. So having a running back that can crack off a couple of big runs and make them guess and make them have to play a little bit more honest, it's going to be really important for Texas. So again, this is not meant to be the dump on James Simon hour. That's not what we're doing here. But I would say for the state of the running back room, it's not, at least reading the tea leaves from where I'm at, it's not an encouraging sign based on what they've got going on.
No, and that's the thing too, what worries me as well. I've heard like every name every other week. So that tells me there's really no one stepping up consistently. It's kind of like the flavor of the week there at the running
Yeah.
back room, which again, that's kind of what we did last year. It was like whoever had the hot hand, feed it. But that doesn't work when you get the high level competition. It just doesn't. Like we saw who won the national championship last year. Look at what Ohio State had in the backfield. Look at what those Alabama teams had in the backfield. Look at what Georgia had in the backfield. There was always like a two-headed monster everywhere you look at college football national championships. Even Michigan had Blake Corum and then Donovan Edwards to a lesser extent. We don't have that right now, and that worries me. Now, if CJ Baxter comes back and he's completely healthy halfway through the season, that will put my worries to bed, because I said last year, if CJ Baxter's healthy and Jane Blue's healthy at the beginning of the season, I thought that was one of the 2 or 3 best combinations in the SEC. Problem was CJ Baxter gets hurt like a month after I said that, and we saw what happened last year, and Jane Blue kind of didn't live up to the expectations we had for him here at Texas. So someone's either going to have to step up out of that room, or CJ Baxter's just going to have to get healthier quicker, I guess, for that room to be okay, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I think Texas, they haven't. The one thing that gives me a little bit of a less like pause or anxiety is what I mentioned. We were talking about the portal additions, right? Texas hasn't really been tied to any portal running backs at this point. They haven't, anybody that's popped in, you've never seen Texas tied to them, which generally means that they're pretty content with what they have at the room. If they don't like what they have at the room, they are not shy about going and getting and paying people to come and commit to Texas. So the fact that they haven't done that means that probably CJ Baxter is going to be in a good position, and most of his lack of action in the spring is mainly just to give him some more time to rest up, right? And that they feel okay with what they've got in the running back room.
No, I think that's a fantastic point, because you're right. Sark will immediately call out if someone asks him, what do you need? And he'll say, yeah, straight up. He said it. I need a wide receiver, a tight end, and some defensive linemen. And what did they go get? Wide receiver, tight end, defensive lineman. So if he sees it and he's like, I can ride with this running back room, then I'm going to trust him, because so far he's hitting about 1,000% on his transfer recruiting. I mean, there are guys that we pulled in didn't work, but they're I understood why we brought them in. So
yeah,
I'm not going to fault him for that. But I agree. And again, like we both said, this is not a hit on James Simon. Like I said, we both said he's going to be a good player for Texas. I think we're both confident in that. Just he's not that 5-star blue chip guy you want playing right away for Texas.
And we got spoiled, right? Texas fans got spoiled because we went from Bijan and Roshan to Jonathan Brooks, and so now we're a little spoiled at running back, and it was an embarrassment of riches. So maybe we're finding out how the other half lives.
No, that's very true. We have been very spoiled. And, you can't be great at every position. I think we're going to be pretty damn good at offensive line. We're going to be good at quarterback. As long as the wide receivers are healthy, I think we'll be good there as well. If we're a little bit weak at running back, I think we can survive that. And also, I think they want to get more downhill in the running back room with their running backs going downhill and more power run game. I think I will say this room is way more set up for that than it is the one cut type system. Like if you just want to get straight downhill, Jared Gibson's a bull. Christian Clark can be a bull. Cedric Baxter can definitely be a bull. We've seen that.
Yep.
Next topic. So Texas has a bunch of visitors coming into June. When we're talking, I think there's like 50 visitors coming in for June already scheduled, and it's only going to grow. I'll run through these real quick. Sam Utu, Nicholas Robertson, Max Wright, who's committed to Texas, Kendall Gerville, Luke Waffley, Kosi, I'm going to butcher some of these, Acapala, Jermaine Bishop, Valden Stone, Samari Matthews, Justice Fitzpatrick, Dia Bell, Caden Finley, Chris Stewart, Caden Prothrow, John Turntine, Samuel Rosenborough, Bryce Perry Wright, Jalen McCoy, Kamari Brooks, Dre Quinn, Tank King, Chase Calcutt, Jalen Lott, Xavier Crowell, KJ Edwards, Mark Bowman, Hayward Howard Jr., Amari Latimer, Aaron Gregory, Caden Dixon Wyatt, Jabari Mack, Heezy Kent, Felix Ojo, Cody Green, Malachi Lee, Zayden Krempin, Jamion Winfield, Dylan Berryman, Tico Crittenden, Bodney, Cleveland, and that is the list. And I'm sure it's only going to grow, so it's a big list. So who are your top 5 visitors you'd like to see Texas land during this time when they do visit Texas in June?
Yeah, so first one on the list, John Turntine, right? Whoever, however you say his last name, that is a can't miss for Texas. Like there's one other can't miss lineman in here, and he's on my list too. But Turntine is a guy who absolutely needs to walk away, if not committed to Texas, like a guy Texas in a handy lead for him, because you Texas is going to be fine at offensive line for a couple of years, but you want to keep that cycle going. Texas is in a really good position where you're getting guys to be able to rest a couple of years, right? We're getting these elite guys who come in, Baxter and Gooseby, right? Those are guys who came in, were hotly contested recruits that came in and sat for a couple of years, and now we're seeing where they're at. So I don't want to repeat myself twice. So my top 2 guys on the list are Turntine and Ojo, right? 1 and 2 on my list are those 2 guys that they need to walk away from that visit weekend, if not committed to Texas fully, like Texas in a handy lead.
No, I agree with that. I have number 1, Felix Ojo as well. I think this guy's just a freak, like 6'6", 275. This is a guy that's easily, once he gets here, you'll see him weigh 300, 305 right away. He's just going to put on weight. He's got that type of frame. If you're 6'6" as a senior in high school, you got the frame to put on weight. He's ranked as the 7th best player in the whole country. 2nd or 3rd best offensive tackle, depends where you want to look in the recruiting services. So I think he's a hell of a football player. Texas is prioritizing him. He has said it himself. Texas has said it. So I definitely think they need to land him. And I've said this. This is a recruiting cycle where these type of guys are in your state, 1, and 2. That big class was 4 years ago. So now it's time to get hit again with another big class and allow kind of a reset there at the offensive line position. So I completely agree with that. You already went with your number 2. So I'm going to go with my number 2, Jamion Winfield. I think Jamion Winfield is a freak. Last year, guys, he had 22 tackles for loss and 8.5 sacks. He is currently committed to USC, but he's from Texas. And to me, guys, I could care less if he's committed to USC. If you look at USC's cycle last year, they had so many guys, including Justice Terry, who's now at Texas, early on. Oh, I'm going to Southern Cal, and I'll tell you why. Southern Cal's a really cool school to commit to. Not many guys go and play there because it's on the West Coast. They don't really care about football as much. They just don't. If you look at the TV ratings, that's the truth. If you look at the stands, that's the truth. They don't pay top dollar like most of the other schools in the South or even the Big Ten. The rest of the Big Ten does. So I think there's a real shot Texas gets this guy to flip over to Texas and actually come to the University of Texas and not just commit.
There's also a real shot that the head coach at USC is a different guy when signing day comes. So yeah, I'm with you there. And I think he's a guy who, he is a plug and play defensive tackle, right? He's already 6'4", 6'5" as a senior. So big kid will come to campus, add 10 pounds just by breathing air in Austin, right? Just be up to it. So I gave you my number 1, number 2. My number 3 guy, Caden Prothro, is a guy who Texas, I think, absolutely needs to land. 6'6", 210, freak athlete, tight end. Everybody in the country wants him for good reason. He is probably more on the modern flexi tight end than the inline type of tight end, but I'm not mad at it. We saw what Texas was able to do with Jatavian Sanders in that type of role. I'm not saying he's the athlete that Jatavian Sanders was and will be that kind of level, but he is a guy who I think can come in, and he's that matchup nightmare at tight end, right? He's too big for corners, he's too fast for linebackers, so he's a guy, top 40, I think. He's like right on the edge of top 25, almost. He'll end up being a consensus 5-star, I think, by the end of the year. He's a guy, when there's a 5-star tight end from a rival's state that has heavy interest in you, there's a lot of incentive to sign him.
No, I agree. It's funny. We're on the same wavelength, just different player. I have Mark Bowman. This is a guy that reclassified from last year's class, and this guy's going to be ranked as either the best or second best tight end after reclassifying. I think that tells you how damn good this guy is. His dad's actually from Texas. They moved out to California. He's one of those guys. I guess his dad is pushing him to go to Texas. His dad said it on multiple sides, like, I want him to go to Texas. That doesn't mean he will end up at Texas, but I do think Texas will end up in his final 3. It's going to be interesting what he decides, but this is a game changer at tight end. This is a guy that's being compared to Brock Bowers. Like, that's crazy to me that this guy's being compared to Brock Bowers, and especially after reclassifying. I think that tells you how special he is. He's 6'4.5", 225. He's legitimately good at everything. Again, there's nothing bad I look at and say, man, he needs to get better at that. And I think he can just be a very, very special player in this offense. I think he's the type of guy that would take this offense to a level that hasn't been at in like since the Vince Young days.
I'm with you there. And again, a game-changing tight end. Either one of these guys. I like Pro Throw. That's just my preference. But either way, I'm happy about it. Who's next on your list?
Number 4, I have KJ Edwards. Again, we just talked about the running back situation, and we've kind of missed out. Javion Osborne's headed to Notre Dame most likely. Xavier Crowell seems like he's going to end up at Alabama right now. So this is the guy left. Now, I think he is higher rated than Javion Osborne. I don't know about Xavier Crowell. I think they're about the same ballpark-wise. He's the 42nd best player, according to 247. But 11.25 yards per carry. So he's just definitely a home run threat. Those are like some Bijan Robinson numbers out of high school. I think Bijan averaged like 12 or 13 yards a carry. And this is in Texas. So he's a really good player, really special player. And I think he elevates the room if he comes to Texas. And this is the type of guy, if he came in and played right away, then we're like, oh, that makes sense. Whereas, again, like we said, James Simon, that doesn't bode well for the running back room. That would bode well if he came and started right away at Texas.
I'm with you there. I had him as well. He's the next guy on my list, so I'll just flip-flop him for the sake of not repeating ourselves. Yeah, KJ Edwards, he's an elite playmaking running back. He's from your state. He's a guy who can come in, and if that running back room continues to be muddy, he's a guy that could very easily rise to the top of a muddy middle in a running back room. He's that guy who I think plays big. He's 5'10", 180, but also has a little bit more of the speed that I think Texas is lacking in the room. So I'm with you there. I think he's a guy who could come in. And if we hear his name a lot during next spring, and I would not be shocked to hear him as the next guy up.
No, 100%. He's a special play. And there's a lot of special running backs in this class. It's pretty deep running back class, so it'd be awesome to land him. Who's your next one up?
So I have, this was probably my most controversial pick. I got Tank King next on my list. I like his game. He's not like the flashiest guy. He's like a 400s kind of guy, but he's a 6'2", 205 linebacker who's played multiple positions in high school. He's just a ball player, and he's mean and he's nasty. In Texas, we just talked about it with impact players, right? Anthony Hill gonna be gone after this year, right? Leonga Leifau, 1 year left probably after this year. Texas needs to reload at that linebacker position. He's a guy I like. Defenders from Port Arthur. It's just something about the swag they bring. It's something about the attitude they bring. So he's not like the flashiest name on the list. He's not, Caden Finley was like my honorable mention right below him. Caden Finley, elite wide receiver. But when it comes to defenders, Tank King has everything I like. And he's a guy, so I think if Texas adds him, he's also kind of a gravitational personality from what I've seen from him. So he's a guy that I think Texas would be very happy to have, and I'd be happy for Texas to have him.
No, he has a great frame and body to play linebacker at Texas. Like, they have a type for that, and I think he fits that. Number 5 for me is Samari Matthews. Again, prototype of the cornerback position, 6 foot, 180 pounds, long, lengthy guy. Right now, it seems to be it's either going to be Clemson or Texas. Obviously, this is in April. Things could change, but that's the early lead here. I think Texas is definitely going to come on strong. We usually do coming down the stretch, and he's, like, again, the prototypical cornerback that we want here, especially in a PK defense. And then also with Dwayne Aquina. Dwayne Aquina likes nasty guys that like to get up in the face, jam a little bit, play a little bit of man coverage, and I think he can fit that definitely day one coming in at Texas. And he's probably going to grow. Like, he's 6 foot now. He could end up being 6'1" or 6'2", and we know we like long, lengthy corners right now on the 40 acres.
Yeah, he's a guy who has everything to be a shutdown corner under the tutelage of the man who's created basically 75% of the shutdown corners in Texas modern history, right? Dwayne Aquina is the type of guy that takes that type of player and turns him into a Sunday player. And so I think if Texas can bring him home, Dwayne Aquina is going to be very happy and have another piece of clay to put a Thorpe Award on.
No, 100%. That does it for this list, guys, and for this episode. So please, again, this has been the 49th edition. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out. And join us every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time talking Texas Longhorns football. That time is fast approaching to where these guys will actually be committing soon. Committing season's usually over the summer, a little bit into the season, and then again, it will come in big chunks towards the end of the season, but we're almost there. So please, guys, we'll keep up to date with that. So join us every Monday and with breaking videos. If you want to check us out on Twitter, right there, that is my Twitter, MatthewMS97. And if you want to check Gerald out right there, that's his Twitter and Blue Sky, as well as his Longhorn Pod right there. You can check it out on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast. So we really appreciate you guys doing that. And again, guys, thank you for joining us for the 49th show of Texas Longhorns Live. Please hit that like button, please subscribe, and hook 'em.
Hook 'em, baby.